today. For anyone who was in the room with me in part one of this, to hear about my journey to see Steve Hardison in Phoenix, Arizona, obviously you'll have heard that story. If you haven't and you've registered for today, you should have received a recording, which you may or may not have listened to or watched before. As I say, I don't think it will really make a difference. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, then you can watch it again. You'll also get a recording to this. And I'm not precious about this conversation, about this story, about the recording. So if you feel there are people in your world who would also get value from hearing this story and hearing what's in it for them, please do share with other people. So don't feel like it's a secret or you need to keep it to yourself. I'm more than happy for anyone to see this. So that's the first invitation. We're going to basically what happened in the first room when I was sharing about my journey, because it started such a long time ago. There was so much to share about the journey to even get to Phoenix that we then didn't have much space to share about actually what happened when I was there. So there was a lot of requests for a part two, hence why we're all here today. So I'm going to try and talk more about, what happened in the room with Steve, but there are still some bits around the story that are relevant that I think are worth sharing. And I spent some time this morning just preparing for today, thinking about what I wanted to share with you, and very much trusting that whatever that is and whatever is spoken into the room is what you guys need to hear today, or what you'd like to hear today. There is also an invitation that if there is anything you hear today that is particularly of interest to you, or you want to know more about, or you've got some questions, there'll be a chance for some Q&A at the end of the session today. But also please do reach out and we will create some time just for you to pick up on anything from today that is particularly relevant. So at the beginning of the first room, what I did was I shared the invitation that Steve shares in about how we are listening. So I'm just going to say that again, that invitation of how we're listening, who we're being in the room today and how we're listening, because it might just change how you hear whatever is being spoken about today. So I'm going to share that again just to start us off. So the advice is to listen from the point of view of finding out something that is of value to you. So you listen for you. Don't listen to see if you agree with what's being said or not, or whether you like me or my story or not. It's the invitation is when you catch yourself agreeing or not agreeing, try to remember to go back to listening for something that will be of value to you in your life. So just to summarize that really is listen for you. What's in this for you? That's no disrespect to me or my story, but this is for you. To not be seeking to agree, but seeking to understand rather than agree or not agree, to make it wrong or right. And then to, as I say, just listen as in, well, what is it in this for me? Not to think about Rebecca's story so much. Okay, does that make sense? And while I'm talking, please, if you have any questions or thoughts or anything like that, as they come up, please do pop them in the chat, and then we can always go back to them in the Q&A, because sometimes something comes into our mind while I'm talking that you want to ask, but then by the time it gets to the Q&A, you've forgotten what it is. So please do, if you want to, just pop anything in the chat and we will come back to it at the end. So that's the invitation. You're here for you. It's very nice that you're all here with me, but it's for you. And I'd really like you to get something of value from today. So as I say, we talked last time about the journey to Phoenix and to meeting Steve. And as I was preparing for today, one thing that I realized was I listened back to the recording myself just to hear it afresh. I said that the recording would also be for me. And one of the things I heard in that when I listened back to it was that I said that I'd really only discovered Steve Hardison when I picked up the book, The Ultimate Coach, which I'm going to do some reading from actually today as well. But that I've shared with a few of you, that I picked this book up. So if you haven't had a chance to have a look at this book, I would strongly recommend you do. I'm going to read from it in a second, which will hopefully give you some insight into it. But actually, I realised I've been listening to a different book called The Prosperous Coach. Luckily, I have all these books handy. I'm not a bookseller, I promise. So The Prosperous Coach was a book written by Rich Litvin and Steve Chandler. Steve Chandler has a lifetime agreement with Steve Hardison and coaches with him. He's a fabulous coach. And I actually picked up and read this book probably 5 years ago. And obviously, because Steve Chandler coaches with Steve Hardison's name was mentioned in this book a few times. And I realized as I was listening to this on Audible in the car the other day, that the Steve Hardison name had been drip feeding into my brain long before I picked up the book last year. So the story starts even further back than that. For any of you who are coaches in the room, and I know some of you are, this is a fantastic book to read about how to build a thriving coaching practice. It's not about just how to be a coach. David's nodding here. He knows this book well. It's about how to build a coaching practice that serves you as a means of creating income, right? Creating money. So it's a really good book if anyone wants to have a look at it. Anyone who's here who's in the service industry, I think there are some really fantastic lessons in there. And I know some of my recruitment friends are in the room today. There are lots of lessons in that book that are equally as relevant for the service that we provide to our customers and our customers, clients, candidates, that would be relevant from that book in that world as well. So if any of you are in that world, don't rule it out if you're not a coach. I think there are some great learns in there. I promise I'm not a bookseller and I'm not on commission for any of these books that I am mentioning. Okay, this is just me sharing value with you. So I wanted to share that actually his name had been sort of dripping into my mind a long time before that. But last time when I opened the room, I shared from the book what Steve wrote on the back of the book. Because if you have picked up this book, there is instructions on how to read it. And you start on the back and then you read the first few pages. So today, if you want to hear what's on the back, you can listen to the recording. But today I thought I'd read what Steve Hardison wrote at the beginning of the book and the introduction, because I think it's really, one, it sucks me in. That's why I then committed to going to Arizona to be with him. But also I think it sort of is a good primer for what I'm going to share about my experience there. So before you begin, this is what Steve asks you to read in the book. I never wanted to write a book, and I haven't. I never wanted to have a book written about me, but here it is. This book is a gift from my wife, Amy. And if any of you watched the first recording, Amy is an unbelievable human being. And I spent some time with her when I was in Phoenix as well, which was incredible. So Amy, who wrote it, and my friend Alan D. Thompson, who conducted the research and interviews on which it is based. And it's not just a gift to me, but to you too. And now you're reading it. So with your permission, I'll give you some suggestions on how to read it. You see, this isn't an ordinary book. It's not simply a biography. It's not a self-help book. It's not a literary classic. It's definitely not a book about how to coach. In fact, it's not a book about doing anything. It's a book about being. And it's a book about you. To access this book, ask yourself these questions as you read. And these are great questions to ask yourself every day, right? Who am I being as a partner, parent, or friend? Who am I being as a leader? Who am I being as a member of my community? Who would I need to be to have miracles show up in my daily life? Who would I need to be to create value in the work I do? Who would I need to be to generate a life of abundance? And as you're listening to these, think of the ones that really land with you. If there's something that really stands out in any of these questions, write them down, because there'll be something in there for you to go back to, because there's a lot of them. So if there's something that catches your attention, write it down. Who would I need to be to alter my relationship with fear? Who would I need to be at peace with my past? Who would I need to be to step powerfully into my future? Who would I need to be present as a way of being? Who would I need to be to live the most extraordinary life I can live? Who would I need to be to know that my life makes a difference? Who would I need to be fully in love with myself and my life? Who would I need to be to improve my relationships with the most important people in my life? Who would I need to be to read The Ultimate Coach and have a personal breakthrough in being wonderful me? The best part about this book about you, is that it is endless. The story goes on and is written by your being. So this is one of the teachings of Steve, and the book it's about who we're being. It all comes from who we are being, not what we are doing. So if you buy the book, all those questions are in there, and you can listen back to the recording on this. But that started when I read this book. This started this idea of who am I being, and listen to the recording from the first one of all the things that have me commit to going over to Phoenix to spend time with Steve, because I did have a personal breakthrough reading the book. I did have something shift in who I was being that had me go, do you know what? I am going to go and I'm going to spend time. I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of money to go and spend 2 hours with the ultimate coach in Phoenix, Arizona, and create that for myself. Now, there had to be a shift in my being. I had to have some kind of personal breakthrough in reading the book to even think that was possible from where I was right then. Very much the story of last time, the story I shared in the last room. So my first invitation, if you haven't already done it, is go and get the book or get it on Audible. Read it as Steve invites you to read it for you, and see what personal breakthrough you can have. And anyone who wants to do that and would then like to explore with me what they get from the book, please reach out and we can have that conversation. So coming back to my experience though, so from that book, I wanted to go over and see Steve. So in the lead up, so this was January this year, it was booked for 10 a.m. on the 30th of January, 2023. And in the lead up to me going, Steve and I were having some communication about, being in the room with him and what was going to happen. And he sent me some reading to do before I got there to start, building up my understanding of what I wanted and what he would be, what we would be creating together. And he sent me an article, and I just wanted to share something from this for you. And Paula, who sat next to me, is going to be just putting in some links into the chat. She's done that already a couple of times of some of the people that I'm referencing. So if you want to, copy out any of those, please do, and as other references and other resources that you can use. And when I was, again, preparing for today and wanting to share with you guys, something jumped out from what he'd sent me that I just wanted to talk about. And this, please, if I forget to do this, which I might do, is basically all these things that I'm sharing with you, all were the stars that were aligning up to what then occurred in the room for me. Okay, so these were all things that were grabbing my attention for me that I could see were building up to the conversation we were going to have. So I just wanted to share this piece. It was a long article, and it was about a lady called Byron Katie, who is a fabulous coach, healer, who talks about doing the work, which is a series of questions to work with for forgiveness and understanding. So just wanted to share. I probably haven't done her justice, so go and have a look at her website. But this is the bit that in the article he sent me. Today we find ourselves attempting to balance modern life and family and the demands of the world. And it seems there are a million things taking their toll. So this is someone asking Byron Katie this question. What do you see as the origin of stress? So the whole article was all about how stressed everyone in the world is right now. And I'm sure we can all relate to that, right? We all have stuff going on in our world or in our lives where we will feel stress. So he's asking, how do we balance modern life, family, and the demands of the world? Now, I'd never asked Steve that particular question, but hey, you know what? That's very present in my world, right? I'm a single mum. I've got modern life, which is me, having my kids every other week and sharing with their father. They've got family. I've got other things going on. I'm trying to build a business, trying to serve my clients, and everything that's going on in the world out there, right? I think I shared with most of you last time, if you were in the room with me, I don't really tune much into the outside world. I don't really tune into the news, but it can't help infiltrating through in many ways. And there is so much going on out in the world. So no wonder we feel stressed, right? Even if it's something going on close to us, in our close community or in the bigger world. So Katie looks the person who asked her this question straight in the eye, Byron Katie, lady. We believe our stressful thoughts. We believe thoughts that are not true for us. And only then do we experience stress while we're believing the thought. So this was just a suggestion that Steve was putting into my head ahead of when we were in the room together about how we create the thoughts, which then creates our experience of it. So as an example, part of the reason I don't tune into the news is I don't necessarily believe that we're being told something that isn't going through filters of someone else's thoughts of what it is that they want to share with us, how they want us to experience the world. But essentially, again, this was just the start of a thought that was, how do my thoughts create my world? So again, please take what you hear in that. But for me, that just started me, and it's something that was already happening, but it was that idea of I am creating this through who I am being and what I am thinking. And so that's just like a seed that he'd started to plant. He'd sent me a week or so. So I read that article and started thinking about this. And in going to the room, there's a couple of other synchronicities and things that landed for me that had me show up in the room a certain way with Steve. And in the last room, I talked a lot about the commitment that I created, that I was going to go and I was going to have the most unbelievable trip. And I was going to have the most unbelievable experience, the most extraordinary experience with Steve in that room, almost as if he hadn't showed up, right? Because I wanted to create that change in my life. So I'd already started to get that idea of how powerful I am at creating before I was even there. And there was a few things that happened along the way that really had me believe that in that belief, there was things happening around me that were supporting that were making me see that I was on the right path. Things that we can miss when we're too tuned into all the noise that I was just talking about and less tuned into what was going on for us. So I just wanted to share a couple of those with you as well. One of them is, one of my favorite pieces of music is Claire de Lune. I think I said this last time, we were trying to figure out a way to play music on Zoom Room. I still haven't quite figured that out, so we haven't got it playing for you. But Claire de Lune, if any of you knew, by Debussy, is a beautiful piece of music. And when I was going off to America and I was in the Gatwick, I'd got there super early to make sure I didn't miss my flight, etc., and went into the bathrooms at Gatwick. And while I was there, while I was in the bathroom, I could hear. Now, I hadn't noticed any other music at all in any of the time when I've been in any of the places in Gatwick. And suddenly, all I could hear was Claire de Lune playing. And they were playing it in the restrooms in Gatwick. And again, for me, that was like a sign. I talked about signs in the first room. That was a sign. This is my music. This is the music that I have used for many years to tune into my true self, to my sovereignty. And David, who's in the room, does a lot of work around embodiment and archetypes, and David Brown, and talks about sovereignty a bit. So that's something that I know that David will associate with. But again, it was really like, I'm in the right place. This is where I should be. And that just had me, again, further commit to what I was about to create in the room with Steve. So that came on, and I later found out, and I did some research, and I think Paula has just shared in the link, in the comments, a link to this on my LinkedIn page, because I then found out about Claire de Lune, and I hadn't ever really thought about what the piece of music was about. And I'm going to try and find my notes now and realise I haven't got them. Where are they? Hang on, bear with me. But basically, it talks about being a soul's journey, right? The music, the emotion in the music takes us to the idea of going through this journey to find ourselves. And it. Obviously, I hadn't realised that's what that piece of music was about. But when I read it, I realised why that piece of music had always had me associate with my true self. And obviously, the journey that I was going on to see Steve was exactly that. It was my soul's journey. And so I shared about that. Sorry, thank you, Paula. I shared about that on a post, but in the moment I didn't know that's what it was. And this is where these synchronicities, these signs, and the magic that gets created, the ripples out in the world, carry on, because all of that landed after I'd got back from seeing Steve. So that was a piece of music that was really important to me. And so yeah, in the bathrooms in Gatwick, I was now like, right, okay, I'm in the right place. So that happened. I then also, just the day before I went into the room with Steve, he sent me another article about Nadine Lauder, who'd painted the 1111 masterpiece. So the picture that you've all seen on my post that have hopefully had you turn up here today, against this beautiful picture that she created, that he commissioned in Phoenix in his room. In his garden, was this beautiful paintings, and underneath it is all the I am statements that all his clients had created, which is one of the things that I created in the room with him. And so he sent me a piece about this, a whole diary of how this was all created, all the people who showed up to write their I am statements on the wall, how Nadine painted it. And as I was reading through this, I read through it, it's a beautiful story about how that was all created, all the different people that showed up to write their I am statements on it. And right at the end of this passage was a little snippet from a quote that, again, was one of those things that has been an anchor in my life for many, many years, and has always been a quote that has resonated with me. Now, all of you probably know, because you've probably seen my stuff out in the world, I love a quote, right? So I have lots of favorite quotes, but this one has always spoken really deeply to me. And again, was one of these things that's like, I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing. And also it became part of what was created then when I was with Steve. So the quote is, and it's often attributed to Nelson Mandela and a speech that he did, but actually it's Marianne Williamson, who, if you haven't heard of her, again, Paula will share a link to her page. She's quite prevalent at the moment because she's doing quite a lot of work over in America politically at the moment, which I'm not here to get into the politics of that. But she's she writes beautiful stuff, and it's from her book, A Return to Love. So I'm going to read you the quote. And again, there's something in here that has always resonated with me, which is part of what I then talked to Steve about. So, our deepest fear, by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. There's quite a few people in the room who I've probably sent that quote to at one time or another, because I think all of us can probably resonate with that idea of feeling small, of sometimes feeling like we're fearful of failure, whereas actually we get an essence of actually it's a fear of success. It's a fear of being all that we are here to be. And of course, that's one of the things that I did with Steve, was to stop believing the idea that I'm small, to stop believing that by being small, by keeping myself small, by not believing in everything that I am, I'm not serving the world. I'm not serving myself, and I'm not serving the world. And so this, again, was just one of those threads. This is like my favorite quote. It has been, and it shows up whenever I need it most. It's, again, like the piece of music, like Claire de Lune. This will show up when I most need to remember that there is no service in me playing it small. And in several conversations with clients as I've been working with them, that has become a theme, and therefore I've sent them that quote. So this showed up just the day before I was going to be with Steve. So I was like, okay, cool. We're in the right place. This is all good. So, but I want to get into the room because I know that's what a lot of you guys want to know. So the next day I go along to Steve Hardison's house. My appointment is at 10 a.m. I get there super early, get an Uber there, have an amazing experience with the Uber guy, which I shared in the last room. So listen to the recording to find out about that. Lovely guy. And get to Steve's house. And I am super nervous, super excited, sitting on the porch, waiting for my time. He's left me beautiful gifts that I'd gifted him and Amy when he was in London. They're waiting for me. He'd left a book that my coaches, Sam Wilde and Lisa Hopper, had gifted him. So, you know, he was already creating this idea of that me being there was something incredible, that I was, the most important person in the world. He'd taken all these snippets that we'd shared, and he was creating this for me. And I was sitting there sort of reading through all this stuff, and he'd also left a book, which I did say I would share last time, because this is part of the story. He'd left a book. Again, I'm not a bookseller, I promise. I just have a lot of books. And it's called The Giants and the Smalls. It's by a guy called Nicholas Smith, who I've met him now, as in on Zoom. I haven't met him in person, but I hadn't even spoken to at the point that I went over. I'd actually taken a copy of this book with me anyway, because I wanted to read it again, because the giant in this book is Steve Hardison. This is Nicholas Smith's story about his experience of Steve Hardison, right? And about how we are all giants. Again, it's the same message as in the quote that I've just shared. So I'd taken a copy of this book with me to read, and then Steve gifted me this book and a signed copy from the author. I have subsequently spoken to Nick Smith. He is an incredible person. Go and have a look. I think Paula's going to share their website. He does some incredible stuff. They have a live TV show. They are brilliant. And I'm going to be hosting a book reading, Nick reading the book in a couple of weeks' time. So that book was waiting for me. So I'm sort of flicking through all this stuff, and then I'm getting ready to ring the doorbell to go in, and Steve appears. And any of you who have listened to the recording, he was wearing pink. He knew who I was. He knew how I showed up in the world. He had a beautiful pink jacket on, beautiful pink shoes. He had a pink Union Jack shirt on, because again, he's intentionally creating that this experience that we're just about to have is all about me, that I am the most important thing in the world, and that he has paid attention. That idea of presence again, and love that I've talked about last time. So we go from the porch. So he shows up on the porch. We go inside, and I think I shared on the last in the last story that it all had this kind of surreal feeling of it, like I was walking into a film. And I shared that the film it would be for me is Dirty Dancing, right? I know that film inside out, back to front. I could probably recite it to you, or I certainly could have done a few years ago. And I felt like I was baby walking into the room. Unfortunately, I love Steve. He's not quite Patrick Swayze, but he is gorgeous in his own way. But if it had been Patrick Swayze, I'd have also been happy. But so anyway, so we walk into his house. And it's a beautiful, great big house that overlooks the Native Indian reservation in Phoenix. You look at, he takes me down into his living room, which is this gorgeous place, which I feel like I know because I've read the book and I've read the stories and I know people who've been there. Just had this real familiarity to it. Looking over this beautiful view, the mountains beyond that. And we just sit there and we chit chat. It's really chit chat. He's asking me, I think I shared this last time, he's asking me about my friends, he's asking me about my boys and my family, and we're talking about the event that's going to happen in India, and we're just talking. And makes me feel very welcome, makes me feel that, makes sure that I feel comfortable. And this again is all, I didn't go there to learn how to be a great coach, but as I'm experiencing Steve, I'm learning and I'm picking up all these ways that he's making this space the safest space for me to be able to do the work that I need to do, which is one of the things I'd love to do and create for anyone who works with me. So I'm learning just by being in the room with him. Makes me feel totally at ease, make sure I'm comfortable, make sure I know where everything is. He shows me around his beautiful home. And again, he's starting to create this idea of there's no separation. This is my work, this is my home, this is my family, this is who I am, this is who I'm being. And so we have a tour around his house, and one of the rooms that he showed me, which I thought was incredible, was he has a bathroom that his guests that come and coach with him can use, so they can access it from the garden. It's right next door to where the office is. And when he was having this bathroom remodeled a few years before, the builders said to him, what kind of insulation do you want in the walls? And he said, oh no, I don't want insulation. He said, I know exactly what's going to go in the cavity in the walls. And basically what he did, and he's got gifts from all his clients that have gifted him pictures and books and all sorts of things all around his house. That's one of the things he was showing me, all these things that have been gifted to him from people he'd worked with. So in his bathroom, so this beautiful bathroom is created for his clients to use when they're there. the insulation in the walls, in the cavity in the walls, are more of the gifts that he has been given by his clients. So basically, as they built this bathroom, it's filled with letters, it's filled with books, it's filled with gifts and things that his clients have given him. And so, and he said to me, he said, I asked Amy if I could have a little hole so I could show people. He said, and she said yes, but I had to put a picture over it. So he then basically takes this picture down, and there's a little hole in the wall so you can actually see where all these gifts are. And I just thought that, again, it's this way of, he's just creating everything he's been doing with all his clients, all the things they've shared with him, all the stories, all the thank yous, the gifts they've wanted to give him. He's incorporated into this room where every other client who goes and works with him is going to experience that. They are going to feel all that energy in the room. And I felt it, and I knew, as he was showing me, he was saying to me, this is, oh God, the guy's name escapes me now, but one of the footballer, the guy that he worked with, which is the famous video, which again, Paula will try and find and share for you. He said whenever he visits now, he knows that his gift, his thank you card, his gift is behind the toilet. So he says that, when he's doing his business, he knows that his gift is behind there. So it's all it just created for me. It was just so beautiful how he'd incorporated all of this into this bathroom, right? Who'd think that, right? But Steve Hardison thinks that, but he's no different to us, which is something else that I'll come back to again. If going back to that Marianne Williamson quote, that idea, this is in everyone. It's not because we are someone. It's because it is in all of us. But he has just been creating this intentionally all the way through his life and with all of his clients, because now they're part of that as well. It's not just about Steve Hardison having that in his room. That is now a part of them, a part of their story. Their story is being told to every other client who walks in there. I actually, and I've said to Steve, I'm not sending it to him because I will meet Steve again at some point. So any of you who were here last time or listened to the recording, one of the things that Steve and I created in that room is the I Am Source's Pink Angel. Most of you know that I'm quite pink. And I actually, the next day, I went to the Grand Canyon. After I'd been with Steve, I went to the Grand Canyon because I wanted to go somewhere that was beyond anything I'd ever experienced before, because that was all part of the experience, the trip that I was creating. And we went through Sedona, which again is, and I'm going to get this wrong, but it's something, it's a crossways of like the vortexes. It's very energetically, spiritually strong. I can't remember all the details behind it, but I certainly felt it while I was there. And there was a crystal shop there. And I was with this other lovely couple on this trip who were really not spiritual, I would say. So the guy was really being quite dismissive of the spiritual nature of Sedona and the fact there was a crystal shop. And I sort of said to his wife, I am actually going to go in the crystal shop. And she was quite apologetic about the fact her husband had been quite so dismissive about this. Anyway, I went into this crystal shop and I could have spent a week in there, and I could have spent a lot of time choosing and being with all the crystals. But I found two, and they only had two, little rose quartz, which is unconditional love, angels, little tiny angels. So I bought one for me and I bought one for Steve. And I said to him that I won't send it, but I will bring it at some point, or we will meet and I will share my angel. So at some point, I'm hoping that my little pink angel might be in his toilet wall somewhere, if he's still got any space, or he might have to create a new room just for that. So we'd had this tour, and again, his coaching has started already. So all of these stories that he's sharing with me, everything that he's showing me, all the stories, all the people that he's referencing, he's already coaching me. He's heard what I've been asking him for. He's heard in the chit chat the things that I'm resistant to, or that I feel like I can't share, or that are causing me some discomfort, or that I want to explore. He's already picking up all of this, like in between my sentences, in between my words. He's getting all these messages, and he's starting to weave all this together. So we go out into the garden, which again has this 1111 masterpiece along one side, which is just beautiful, really, really is beautiful. And then he takes me on a tour of the garden. And at this point, I think I shared last time, it's a bit like, hang on, this is a very expensive garden tour that I'm on here. But again, intentionally, he is sharing with me how he has created this. And one of the things is it's a rockery type garden, because as he's high up above the Indian reservation, as I say. So there's all these different areas of it, and he tells me that he does coaching in some of these areas. People that come to him for like a day's intensive coaching, they spend time here, and we might do some yoga here or some meditation here. So he's sharing all of these things again about what's being created in the garden. And one of the things that he stops and shares with me is around, there's all these stones, like I say, it's a rockery there. And he says to me, I created this garden. He said, every single one of these stones that you see here, I chose and I placed in a particular place. He said, I could have just got a contractor and said, look, I want to create a rock garden. Can you just, put a load of rocks in the garden? This is a space for one. He said, I chose carefully and placed particularly somewhere every single rock that is in this garden. And again, this is him landing a message, a distinction to me about how we can consciously create our lives, consciously create who we are being, and consciously create our environment as well. Like he said, it actually means now that whenever he's in his garden, he knows that it's been intentionally created as he wanted it to be, not by default, not just delegated to somebody else, not somebody else's responsibility to do. Which was beautiful, and I'm literally, God, I am like a small child at this point. I'm so excited. I'm there. I'm learning this. I'm literally just soaking it all up. If any of you have spent time with me, I can be like an excited child, which I love. Children are great. They see the world a whole different way to we do, without all these limiting beliefs and stories and shit that we've picked up along the way. So he's sharing this with me, and then where on the wall, the 1111 wall, there's all the I am statements in between, in the pillars in between. As he's seeing more clients since the 1111 masterpiece wall has been created, he writes their names on the wall, and he's run out of space up on the wall by the masterpiece. So he also was showing me where he'd started another part of his garden. He started another list of names on the wall. So, and of course I would come round and he shows my name is there. And I think I shared last time, I take photos of literally everything, right? But I didn't take one picture the whole time I was there, because I was so present with what was happening. I was so present with him that I wasn't, which was really, really good, actually. But my lovely, lovely coach, Lisa Hopper, has just also been out and had her experience with Steve Hardison. And she has sent me a picture of my name on the wall with her name underneath it, because she's just been to see him. So I'm super excited. I now do have a picture of my name on that wall. But also he's then, again, this is him showing me I'm there. I'm now part of this experience that every other person who's going to come and spend time with him is going to have now. My name's there. It's on the wall there, which was, really incredible as well. So then we go up to back up towards the office. Now the office, he's famous for the office. I know if you read the book or have read the book, excuse me, there is so much that has been created in that space, in the office. That's where all his coaching takes place. He has lifetime agreements with people. Steve Chandler, the coach that I referenced earlier, they have I think it's called the Mirror agreement, which is basically they will coach together until one of them doesn't breathe and doesn't leave a mark on the mirror. That's their agreement, right? So the intensity, the energy created, the stories in that office, I walked in and just being there was incredible. So I go and he's got a great big leather sofa. So I sit there, he's sitting on his chair opposite me. And he said, this is where the work really starts. So this is where we start creating. What is it you want to create today? Why are you here? And I did share a little bit about this last time, but I'll share it as I'm telling you now, because this whole idea of who I'm being today is actually a different being to who I was when I shared this story last time. It's different to where I shared it last night with a friend. So what I'm experiencing now in sharing it is going to be slightly different. So it's worth sharing again. Is I knew that I had gone there it's my 50th this year, and in my message to Steve when I first asked if I could create this space with him, was I want to to leave all of my limiting beliefs, all my stories, all my fears, all my beliefs that I am small, all my fear around being the amazing, glorious, wonderful person that I am. I wanted to leave all them behind, and I wanted to create something else for the next 50 years of my life. And so I shared that with Steve and said, this is what I want to do. And he shared some stories about that, again, that he'd picked up from all the things that I'd wanted to do. And I'd sent him messages leading up to that, one of which was around this idea of being on a loving journey, and that I was great at being loving out there and with strangers, but closer to home, I could find it harder because of a lot of this limiting beliefs and fears and stories about myself that I'd built up. So it's easy to do it out there with other people, but sometimes closer to home, that was harder. So we started doing the work, right? Which was, I think I shared last time that he said normally he wouldn't do this level of work in a Be With session. It's 2 hours. It's not long to spend. It's not long to spend creating the next 50 years of your life, right? It's quite a lot of work to do in a couple of hours. But he said, look, you're here, you're ready. We'll go deep. We'll do the work. And so we started creating my I Am declaration, my I Am document. Now, a lot of you asked after the last session if we could spend a bit more time with what this means. And the I Am declaration is something that Steve created, and that in the work that people do around him and with lots of coaches that have worked with him, is around creating a living vision, a vision of us that we will live into. It's creating a declaration about ourselves that is who we want to be in the world. So, you know, all the questions that I started with, who am I being? Who do I need to be? It's intentionally creating that as a declaration of how I am going to be. Now, there's lots more to that. I can't cover the whole process here really today. It's a very individual process, but essentially that's the work that we did in the room. Again, if any of you would like to work through that, if any of you would like to spend some time with me creating your I Am declaration, then please do reach out and we can create time to do that. But basically what happened was that Steve said to me, right, he said, I want to hear all the stuff, all the limiting beliefs, all the stories, all the fears that you have, this existing declaration of who you are or who you think you are. I just want you to land it on a page. And I shared with you guys last time that literally that was my page, right? And you know, that's a list that I rattled out of all the things about me that I believed when I walked into that room, that I rattled that off. And I could have kept going for another few hours of all the things that I felt about myself. And the invitation from Steve was, you know, go there. This isn't the time to just pretend and be polite and what have you. This is really, what do you really think about yourself? And yeah, Angela's blowing out there. Yeah, it could take a while, right? My lovely friend Angela, lovely to see you here. Angela lives in Pembrokeshire, near where I grew up and my cottage is. So we sometimes get to hang out when I go to Wales. So it's lovely to see you here today, darling. And yeah, I rattled that out really easily, right? And this is my small, right? This is in Marianne Williamson's poem. This is my small. This is me playing it small. This is me believing that I'm not this amazing, wonderful person, that I just am. Like children, like we say, children just show up in the world and they're just amazing and brilliant and the whole world revolves around them, right? It's all the shit we pick up along the way that has us believe we're not. It's the small in this book, right? That's what the giants and the small's about, is us believing we're small when actually we're already giants, right? Now, I'm not going to share everything that's on here because it's hugely personal. I'm not going to share all of it, but I have things on there to give you an idea. What rattled off really easily was, I'm not loving. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I am bad. I am evil. Who knew, right? I am not a good mum. I'm not a loving person. I am selfish. I am worthless. I am too much. Who knew that, right? I'm not enough and I'm too much. Geez, I'm a paradox, right? But these things were rattling off really easily, and they were what I was living by. And this is the distinction that Steve makes around how we are being creates our experience of the world. So he talked about, and I did share this last time, but for purposes of anyone who's not here last time, or just because I feel like I need to share this again, because I've had a newer distinction on this as well, even since coming back, is he was like, We are powerfully creating all the time. We are like the projector, right? We are projecting who we believe we are and who we are being out into the world, and therefore that is creating our experience of the world. And I listened to, I was listening to a Steve Chandler book the other day, another book, sorry, Creator, where he was talking about how, and I loved his distinction on this, and he's worked with Steve, so they've probably dived into this deeper, is that we think we are like a camera, like we're taking pictures of what's happening out there in the world, right? That we are capturing this like it's happening to us. Oh, here's something in my world, I'll take a picture of it, right? What the distinction that Steve landed with me, both Steve landed with me in different ways, was actually we're not recording what's happening, we are creating it. So what he said to me in this work that we were doing was, we are going to create a different version of who we are, a different way of who we are being. We're going to recreate those statements that you have about yourselves, of who you want to live into being, and then we're going to create and project from there. So we're going to rewrite those statements and have you believe something really different about yourself. Now, in that, there's forgiveness. There is a letting go. Now, what Steve meant by, we don't normally do this in a 2-hour session, is it is a process. That process of taking each of those statements, I am evil as a statement, and really looking at it and really going, I don't believe that. It's not just a case of going, I'm going to cross that out and write a different sentence down. It's actually going in there and going, there is no way that I am evil. There is no way. Why have I created that? What is my judgment on myself that has allowed me to believe that for so long, right? Or any of the others, I'm not lovable, or any of the others, I'm not enough, I'm too much, any of those, is to really slow down into them. Forgive ourselves the judgment on ourselves, forgive ourselves the judgment we've made, and to be able to, from there, create something different. And again, this isn't just the I'm going to cross that statement out and just write, I am good, right? It is actually really being with ourselves and seeing what comes up from that forgiveness, from that letting go of the judgment, from loving ourselves a little bit more, what actually might be possible. How can we create a different version of ourselves? Which is where we got to, I am Source's pink angel, right? I am not evil, I am Source's pink angel. That was a process that Steve and I went through, where he just sat with me. He was like, what else might be possible? And whatever was the first thing that came out of my mouth, he was like, yeah, great. What else might be possible? What's an even bigger version of this that we could live into? And, he has a way about him. I said, one of the things is he has this sense of real presence, love. I've never felt, no, I corrected myself last time, I'll correct myself again. The level of love and presence in that room, I felt one time before, which was when I was with my dad in the Chapel of Rest, because it's pure unconditional love and presence. And so by being with me through all of that forgiveness work, that forgiveness of my judgments, Steve was just there as that reflection back. Because when I had the thought, I am evil, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not a good mother, he questioned me. He was just that voice that was saying, what else might be possible? What if that wasn't true? What if you've just created that and we could create something else together? What might that be? And to come from that same place of just coming up with something different, I am lovable. I am pure love. I am unconditional love. And he would then say, but what else might be possible? And he would just take me on a different projection of something that was coming from within. And again, coming back to that quote that I shared there, that fear that we have about being our full and true, most glorious self is actually there. We have the thoughts, but the fear is that we can't express it out in the world. So his invitation was, what if we went there? What if we just created you as all that you want to be? And from that place, going back to the quote, that will give permission for you and everyone else in your life to be fully themselves. And this can be in whatever it is that we are in the world or we want to be in the world, whether that's as a mother, as a friend, as a business leader, as a coach, as an artist. Whatever it is that you are, is how can you create yourself in a way that has you show up fully and that will give other people permission to show up fully as well. And I don't know any walk of life or business where that wouldn't create something different to if we're creating it from all those limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. And it certainly is having me show up more powerfully, wonderfully me than I have ever been before, because I left a lot of those judgments about myself in the office. I left them there and I created something else for myself. And one of the things that we did in there, because I think people get, and I may not be doing this justice in explaining it, and it does, it is a deep process, it's deep work to do. But one of the other things that he talked to me about, and I believe this is in the book, is he talks about the presidential pardon. So he talked about, and I don't know that he did explain the logistics of this a bit to me in the room, and I can't remember them, but in America, there is a presidential pardon, right? So if someone does something, the president can basically excuse them for this, right? And he uses this concept as a way of us being able to forgive ourselves, to allow our humanness, allow for us to make mistakes, allow for us to have been someone that we no longer want to be, and to be able to pardon ourselves. And it's like a process that he uses with his clients, and that he used with me that day, to say, you know what, okay, that happened, but you can pardon yourself. You can give yourself the presidential pardon, right? And you can forgive yourself, because all that you're doing by holding on to that is you're recreating it every day in everything that you're being. So if we could actually fully forgive ourselves, give ourselves that presidential pardon, let it go, right? Doesn't mean that we then can do it again and again and again and again. That's not what we're doing. It just allows us to forgive ourselves, drop the judgment, and create something new. And here's the bit that he gave me that I think I've struggled with before, is he said, and you know what, you can use it more than once. I think the presidential pardon you can actually only use once in the States, right? But actually our own, the one we create for ourselves, whatever you want to call it, your own personal pardon, we can use it again. It's not a reason to keep recreating and reliving our mistakes. It's a way of going, do you know what, that's one mistake I made as a human being. And here, you know what, I might make another mistake as a human being. And every time I do that, I can forgive myself. I can pardon myself. I can let go of the need to punish myself for this. And that for me really landed. And again, I hope I'm explaining that in a way that lands with you. I was, again, this is our doubts coming in. My little voice coming in is, am I explaining this in a way where people are going to understand it, right? So my hope is that I am. My small voice would have me not even be in this room sharing this with you, right? My new voice is, my new power is that I'm going to be here and I'm going to share it from here, and trust that you will get what you need from it. And if you don't, you'll come and ask me and I can explain it a bit more to you. And we're going to have a bit of Q&A in a second as well. And that essentially for 2 hours is the work that Steve and I did in that room. We slowed down, we didn't do everything, but we spent time with a few of those I am statements that I had about how I was, how I felt I was from that place of being, of how I walked into the room. And then we spent time, and again, like I say, it's not just a case of, right, I'm going to scrap that one and write some cliched affirmation. It was, we spent time in the story that had allowed me to create that I'm not a good mother, right? We spent time with, okay, who are you as a mother? Tell me about your children. Tell me about how you have been with your children. Tell me about your experience as a mother. And coming back to the story about the projector, it was really interesting because when I slowed down into my stories about my sons, I have 3 boys. I love them all dearly. It's not been an easy journey for me. And there's a whole other story around that I'm exploring at the moment, about how being a mother has been the greatest and hardest challenge of my life and continues to be. But I realized that projector story came to life for me when I started looking at my boys and how I had been creating them in the world and my experience of them by who I was being. But rather than making that bad and wrong and beating myself up about it, I was able to work through it with Steve to come up with, okay, if I've been creating that experience of them and creating them that way in the world, how powerful am I? How much of an amazing, incredible mother am I that I have created them that way? And now I can start creating my relationship with them as they are now by shifting whom I'm being. And I'm seeing that, when I came back from Arizona, nothing in my world has changed, right? My boys are still my boys. They're still teenagers. They're still living their experience. But who I'm being with them is changing. And I've had to use the presidential pardon a couple of times, right? Because I'm tired and they trigger me. Thank you, Catherine. Darling, it's lovely to have you here. They trigger me and I get it wrong, right? But you know what? I think what I'm seeing as well is the kind of mother I am is I'm still here. I am still showing up for them. I am still loving them. I am still figuring out all this stuff so that I can be the mother that I want to be. And I am a fiercely loving mother, and I fuck it up quite regularly, right? So there's another pardon. I pardon for being that mother. So that's what Steve and I created in the room. We're going to have Q&A in a minute, so you can ask me questions about it. It was the most incredible experience of my life, apart from every other incredible experience of my life, including my children, including every other day that I've had. I've had amazing synchronicities and miracles happen since. I had Nick Smith that I talked about, who wrote the Giants and the Smalls book. After I came back, I had a coaching session with him, which was also the most extraordinary experience of my life. We spent time with my inner child. He talks about it as being your inner CEO that's still running your life, that was created when you were very young. All those limiting beliefs, all those fears that we have, how they can still be running the show. And even though I'd had that amazing time with Steve, I think, I shared last time, it's not a silver bullet, right? I didn't go to Arizona, have 2 hours with Steve Hardison, and suddenly my life is fixed, right? Not that there was anything to fix, right? But it's not a silver bullet. I've got to come back and do the work. It's one of the things Steve shared with me about this idea that we are all, again, coming back to Marianne Williamson's quote, this is everyone. Steve is the way he is. He is an incredible human being. He is an incredible coach. He is an incredible loving person. He is generous. He is kind. He is crazy. If you've ever seen any videos of him dancing, he dances like a crazy person. It's amazing, right? But he creates that every day. He isn't just that. He creates it through his statement, through who he wants to live into being. And that is possible for all of us. So the work didn't end when I left there and everything's sorted. And so I had this amazing experience with Nick Smith where we looked at my inner child and how my inner child that started protecting me from a very early age. I mean, when I was a child, from probably 3, there was stuff going on where I felt I had to protect myself, had been running the show for 47 years, had been keeping me small, keeping me safe. And I love her for that. I have an image of my head of that person. I've got a picture in my mind of when I was 8 years old on a mountaintop, and I can see how that person has been protecting me, but she has also had me stay small, right? So all of these miracles have happened since I came back from Arizona as well. So the work carries on, the miracles carry on. What we created in that room will ripple out. The synchronicities, everything will happen, will keep happening. So I just wanted to sort of finish, and then we'll have a Q&A with some of you who've were in the room with me last time will see that my pink wall that we did talk about last time has got a new addition. So one of the beautiful things that was created when I went to Phoenix was the idea of the Phoenix, right? Was the idea of a rebirth, rising from the ashes, not burning them and clearing them all and getting rid of them all, but not making them bad, not making them something that I needed to forget. It's like from those is what is reborn today, right? So all of those experiences, all those stories I've created is loving every story, every person I've been up until then. So the Phoenix became really a symbol of my journey, obviously, to Phoenix as well. And so there's an artist that I absolutely love, Topher Kirby on Instagram, and I followed him for many, many years. And I've gone to buy a piece of his art so many times. He's over in America, and I've gone. He writes beautiful words that go with them. And I've gone to buy a piece every now and again, and I just haven't for whatever reason. They're not super expensive, but they're not cheap either. And then about I don't know, a couple of weeks after I got back from Phoenix, he posted this, And this, I think you can probably see, hopefully, is a phoenix. But it's most phoenix are very red because they're about coming out of the flames, they're coming out of the fire. This phoenix, you'll see, is a very beautiful blue surrounded by a lot of pink, right? So I saw this image and I was like, this is my picture. And I'm treating myself to lots of things. This is my 50th birthday this year. I'm just treating myself to trips to Arizona, to beautiful works of art, and lots of other lovely treats as well. So I saw this picture and thought, yes, this is the piece of art. And this will actually be put up on the wall properly. It's just propped there because I literally unwrapped it this morning, which was beautiful timing. But also I want to read you the words that are with this piece. And you can see they're written here. You can't read them from there. So I'm going to read them to you and then I'll open up for questions. So it says, so many who have been through so much are often the most beautiful people you will ever meet. They love people as they are, where they are, because that's how they wish love had been shown to them during the difficult days. They carry a powerful courage that can only be earned by living through impossible moments and coming out healed on the other side. They are genuinely kind, powerfully honest, and authentically good. Because when you rise from the ashes, all that remains is love. And I thought that was a really nice way to close off today. This isn't the end of the story. This is the beginning of my story. This is my phoenix. This is my masterpiece wall that my I Am document is behind there. It's really weird because I can now see my hand over here. A great song lyrics that I also shared recently is Get Lucky by Pharrell Williams. And he says the legend, just like the phoenix, the legend all ends with the beginnings. And this, therefore, is not an end, it is a beginning.